Imagine an ordinary evening, a quiet town, and a group of friends, and then a strange encounter, a dark omen. But what seemed like just a coincidence is only the beginning of something far more sinister. Our story starts in a quiet, unsuspecting town, one that you could find anywhere. The kind of place where everyone knows each other, where celebrations bring people together, and where nothing ever goes wrong. It was July 4th, 2025, and the whole town had gathered for the Independence Day celebration. Among them were Chris and his friends, Mia, Eric, Sam, and Lara, just a group of young people enjoying the summer night. But as the fireworks died down, none of them knew that they were on the brink of something unexplainable.
The evening had started so innocently. It was July 4th, 2025, a night when fireworks filled the sky and laughter echoed down every street. In a small town where nothing much ever happened, Independence Day was a big deal. Families gathered in the town square, friends shared stories over sparklers, and a band played patriotic tunes that everyone pretended to know the words to. For Chris and his friends, Mia, Eric, Sam, and Lara, it was the kind of night they'd remember for years to come. Or so they thought. As the fireworks ended and the crowd began to thin, the 5 friends decided to walk home together. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke and fried food, and the night was alive with the residual hum of celebration. They laughed and joked, feeling the simple joy of being young and free. It was when they turned onto a quieter street, away from the noise of the town square, that things took an unsettling turn. Chris was the first to notice him, a figure standing under a dim, flickering street lamp. At first glance, the man seemed homeless, his clothes tattered and worn, his hair wild and unkempt. He didn't seem to notice them as they approached, his eyes staring straight ahead into the night, unfocused and distant. The friends slowed down, exchanging uneasy glances. Mia nudged Chris, whispering, "Come on, let's go around. He's probably just, out of it." But Chris, always curious, couldn't help himself. "Nah, let's just keep walking. He's not hurting anyone," he replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. As they got closer, the man's head slowly turned to face them. His eyes were clouded, almost as if he were blind, but somehow they seemed to pierce right through them. The friends fell silent, captivated by the eerie intensity of his gaze. And then, in a voice barely more than a whisper, the man spoke. "Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum." The Latin words hung in the air like an incantation, strange and unsettling. None of them understood what he had said, but the sound of it was enough to send a chill down their spines. There was something about his voice, low and raspy, as if he hadn't spoken in years. It felt ancient, like a warning from another time. "Yeah, but it's just gibberish," Eric replied, though his voice wavered. "Probably drunk or something, let's go." But before they could move, the man took a shaky step toward them, his eyes widening with a strange urgency. He raised a trembling hand and pointed at each of them, his fingers thin and bony like the branches of a dead tree. "The fog. It will cleanse," he murmured, switching to English. His words were barely a whisper, but in the silence of the empty street, they felt deafening. Chris felt his heart pounding in his chest. Part of him wanted to run, to put as much distance as possible between himself and this unsettling figure. But another part, a deeper, darker curiosity, kept him rooted to the spot. What did he mean by the fog? And what did it have to do with them? "Let's go, Chris," Mia urged, her voice laced with fear. But Chris couldn't take his eyes off the man. Do you need help?" Chris asked, his voice barely audible. The man's eyes flickered with something that looked almost like recognition, as if he'd been waiting for that very question. He took another step forward, his gaze fixed on Chris. "The fog comes for those who do not heed the warning," he said, his voice trembling with an intensity that made Chris's stomach turn. Without another word, the man turned and shuffled off into the darkness, disappearing down an alleyway. The friends stood there in stunned silence, each of them trying to process what had just happened. They exchanged glances, each searching for reassurance in the other's eyes, but finding only the same unease reflected back. "Okay, that was officially creepy," Mia said, breaking the silence. "Did anyone else feel... I don't know, like... he knew something?" Eric scoffed, trying to shake off the tension. "Come on. He was just some crazy guy. Probably homeless, maybe sick. People like that. They say weird stuff all the time." But deep down, none of them believed it. The man's words had left a mark on each of them, a seed of fear that would grow in the days to come. The phrase Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum echoed in Chris's mind, refusing to be forgotten. As they walked home in uneasy silence, Chris felt the thrill of curiosity fighting with the chill of dread. He didn't know why, but he had the sense that this encounter was only the beginning. That night, as he lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that the man's words were more than just the ramblings of a stranger. They were a warning of something that was coming, something unstoppable. And little did he know, it would change everything. The encounter with the strange man under the street lamp was all anyone in the group could think about the next day. They tried to shake it off, convincing themselves it was just an eerie coincidence, a weird run-in with a lost soul. But deep down, a seed of fear had been planted, one that would not stop growing. The words he had spoken, Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum, the fog comes to cleanse the world, played on a loop in Chris's mind, refusing to let him go. Unable to resist, Chris spent hours that afternoon on his computer, trying to dig up any information he could find. He typed the Latin phrase into every search engine, scanned through online forums, even reached out to a few obscure paranormal discussion boards. But no matter where he looked, he came up empty. It was as if the phrase didn't exist, until he stumbled upon a subreddit titled The Fog Prophecy. The subreddit was an unsettling corner of the internet, a dark rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, half-baked paranormal stories, and amateur translations. At first, it seemed like just another collection of wild theories and apocalyptic predictions. But then he noticed something chilling. Other users had posted about encounters with strange people who whispered the exact same Latin phrase. A few posts even included blurry photos of ragged, hollow-eyed figures standing under street lamps, muttering words in Latin to anyone who dared come near. Chris's heart raced as he read the accounts, each more disturbing than the last. One post from a user in a small town in Ohio described how they had seen a man fitting the same description standing in a park at night, reciting the phrase to anyone who passed by. Another user from California reported hearing it from a woman in a subway station, her voice trembling as if she carried the weight of a terrible secret. The eerie commonality between all these stories sent a shiver down his spine. Chris immediately texted his friends, telling them to meet him in the park near Sam's house. He knew they wouldn't believe him without seeing it for themselves. As dusk settled over the town, casting long shadows across the playground, they gathered on a bench watching Chris with skeptical but curious eyes. "Okay, Chris," Mia said, folding her arms. "So what's so important that you had to drag us all the way out here?" Chris took a deep breath, pulling out his phone. "You remember what that guy said last night, right? Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum. Well, look at this." He handed his phone to Mia, showing her the subreddit filled with similar encounters. As Mia scrolled through the posts, her expression changed from amusement to disbelief. Eric leaned over her shoulder, his eyes widening as he took in the same information. Wait, so you're telling me this isn't just some crazy old guy in our town? People all over the country have seen these people too? Not just in this country, Chris replied. Look, there's even a post from someone in Germany. They say they saw a woman in a train station muttering the same phrase. And look at this one from Brazil. It's a guy on a street corner at night, just standing there saying those exact words. Lara looked visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she took the phone from Mia. This can't be real. It has to be some kind of online prank, right? Maybe a hoax, like some kind of internet meme. Maybe, Chris admitted, though he didn't sound convinced. But it just seems too coordinated, too specific, and it's not like this is a huge viral thing. Most of these posts have barely any upvotes. It's like this is something no one's talking about, but it's still spreading. A tense silence settled over them as they each wrestled with the implications. If this was a meme, it was unlike any they'd ever seen. And if it was something else, then what? What did it mean? Why now? Sam finally asked, his voice low. Why would all of this be happening right before? He trailed off, but they all knew what he meant. The date. July 17th was only a couple of weeks away. As if reading each other's minds, they all pulled out their phones, typing July 17th and fog prophecy into search engines. And as they did, the pieces started falling into place. There was a video link buried on a message board post, an old recording uploaded to Vimeo in 2019. The description read, "The Nebula prophecy, warning the world." The thumbnail was dark and blurry, showing what looked like two young men in a car, their faces illuminated by the glow of their dashboard lights. Without thinking, Chris clicked play, and they huddled around the screen, holding their breath. The video was shaky and low quality, filmed at night. It showed two young men parked on the side of a desolate road, speaking in hurried, hushed voices. They seemed nervous, looking around as if expecting something to appear at any moment. The driver turned to the camera, whispering, "We saw him." He was just standing there, right by the highway sign, and he said it. He said, "Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum." And then he vanished, just like that. The camera panned to the passenger, who was visibly shaken, his face pale. "We don't know what it means, but we think it's coming. July 17th. There's this fog. People keep talking about it in the forums. They say it's not just fog. It's something worse." The video cut out suddenly, leaving the friends staring at the black screen, the echo of the final words lingering in their minds. A chill settled over the group, a realization that this was more than just a strange encounter. It was a warning, something woven into the fabric of their reality, something they couldn't ignore. As they sat in the growing darkness, each of them felt the weight of the unknown bearing down on them. Whatever was coming, it was something beyond their understanding, something that felt ancient, inevitable, and terrifying. And for the first time, they realized they had two choices: dig deeper and find the truth, or turn away and hope that ignorance would protect them. But as Chris stared at the blank screen of his phone, he knew that whatever they decided, there was no going back. They had seen the signs. The fog was coming, and whether they were ready or not, it was coming for them. As the days crept closer to July 17th, a sense of unease hung over Chris and his friends, like a heavy fog that wouldn't lift. The eerie words, "Nebula venit ad purgandum mundum," lingered in their minds, haunting them like a song they couldn't stop replaying. They tried to go about their days as normally as possible, but every conversation led back to the same subject: the strange man, the prophecy, and the rapidly approaching date. One night, just 10 days away from the 17th, Chris was lying in bed scrolling through his phone in the dark. His curiosity wouldn't let him sleep. He revisited the subreddit, refreshing it to see if any new posts or sightings had been reported. To his horror, he noticed an increase in sightings from all over the country: New York, Chicago, even as far as small towns in the Midwest. Each encounter described similar figures muttering that same Latin phrase, sometimes under street lamps, other times on desolate highways or near rundown buildings. Then he found a new post that made his heart skip a beat. The user, Fogwatcher 2025, claimed to have uncovered a hidden Vimeo channel linked to a series of obscure conspiracy videos, each dedicated to the prophecy of the fog. Chris's fingers trembled as he clicked on the link, leading him to a single cryptic video titled "The Cleansing Fog: Documentary Evidence." He immediately called Mia, Eric, Sam and Lara, urging them to come over. Within half an hour, they had gathered in his dimly lit basement, eyes glued to the laptop as Chris clicked play. The video was old, grainy, and looked like it had been recorded on an old handheld camcorder. The screen was shaky, showing two young men sitting in the front seat of a car, their faces barely illuminated by the faint glow of the car's dashboard lights. In hushed, frantic voices, the men spoke to the camera, warning about the fog. They explained that they had discovered an underground network of people who believed the fog was not just a natural phenomenon, but an event tied to a massive, catastrophic cleansing. The men mentioned dates, strange Latin phrases, and symbols that seemed meaningless, but carried an ominous undertone. "We don't know what's coming," one of them said, his face pale and haunted. "But if you're watching this, remember the date, July 17th. It's not just fog, it's something else, something that will change everything." The video cut to a disturbing image, a flickering shot of a dense fog rolling over an abandoned street. A strange, rotting odor seemed to seep through the screen, mixing with static sounds that added to the horror. Chris and his friends could feel their hearts racing as the scene shifted back to the two men. "We have to go now," the other man whispered. "They're coming, the fog, it's coming." A loud bang echoed from off-camera, followed by the sounds of hurried footsteps and the slamming of car doors. The video abruptly cut to black, leaving only a haunting silence in its wake. The final frame was nothing more than a text overlay that read, "Don't let the fog find you." The group sat in stunned silence, the weight of the video settling over them like a heavy blanket. Sam, who had been quiet up until now, finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. What if this is real?" Chris felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He didn't want to believe it, but everything they had seen, everything they had read, pointed to something far more terrifying than a simple prank or internet conspiracy. This wasn't just some online hoax. There were too many accounts, too many coincidences, and the way the men in the video had spoken, with such desperation, such fear, it felt genuine, real. But Mia wasn't convinced. "Maybe this is just some viral marketing stunt," she said, attempting to sound dismissive. "Maybe they're promoting a horror movie or some new ARG online." "Maybe," Chris replied, but he didn't sound convinced. "But we've never seen anything like this before, Mia. No one's heard of this until now, and it's happening all over. If it was just a stunt, wouldn't someone have come forward by now?" Lara glanced nervously around the room, her eyes wide. What if we're the ones being targeted? Like, whoever is behind this knows we're watching and they want us to see all of this." A chill settled over the room. The idea seemed preposterous, but none of them could fully shake it. It felt as though they were in the middle of something much larger than themselves, something they couldn't control. In a last-ditch effort to gain more clarity, Chris decided to reach out to Fogwatcher 2025, the user who had posted the Vimeo link. He sent a direct message, asking if they had any more information, or if they knew of other people who had encountered the strange figures and heard the eerie Latin phrase. To his surprise, the user responded almost immediately. "You're not alone," the message read. "There are others like you. Some of us have been tracking this for years, but be careful. The fog is coming, and those who have heard the warning, they don't last long. If you're wise, you'll leave it alone. Forget everything you've seen." As Chris read the message aloud, the tension in the room escalated. They exchanged uneasy glances, each of them wondering the same thing. Had they gone too far? And if so, was there a way out? Despite the mounting fear, none of them voiced the idea of abandoning their search. It was as if the mystery had rooted itself within them, too deep to let go. They were hooked, bound to the prophecy and the fog, unable to walk away. But as the days passed and July 17th grew closer, each of them felt an invisible weight pressing down on them, a dark, intangible presence that seemed to follow them wherever they went. At night, they could almost hear whispers in the wind, faint echoes of Latin words carried through the darkness, promising something they could neither understand nor escape. And in their hearts, they each knew that whatever was coming, it was only a matter of time before it found them.
And here we pause for now. But this isn't the end. In fact, the worst is yet to come. What would you do if you were in our protagonist's shoes? How would you face a dark prophecy with terror creeping closer? Don't miss the second part, where you'll discover what this fog really is and what it has in store for the town. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the continuation of this chilling story. And remember, the abyss is waiting for you.